are some of the issues that parents seem to worry about when their children start growing up?
Well, in general, one of the things that parents want to know about is that their child is growing physically, but also developing along normal lines socially and cognitively, and in terms of their motor skills. And so there's a considerable amount of time that we spend talking about those issues to make sure that those things are happening as they should.
We are conditioned as parents early on, your child is in this percentile for height and weight, so we are conditioned to compare children. You have some feelings on, is it all right to compare yourself with your children with other children?
The sort of common wisdom is that you're not supposed to compare your kids. And I often have people tell me, well, I know I'm not supposed to compare my child, but I saw this other child who was doing this or that. And I actually think that's a real valid thing to do because it gives people at least a basis for starting. I think what people want to avoid is drawing conclusions or making assumptions as a result of their observations. But in the sense that the observations initiate some questions and give them a starting point, I think actually it's a very reasonable and a very natural thing to do.
Let's say your child is not performing as well as, say, other children are, and you notice a difference. Are you to assume that maybe your child is lazy, or could you, assess it as maybe there's a problem there? And I'm not sure which one of you wants to take that.
Well, I often hear that my child isn't speaking as well as they should, and I feel that it might be a result of laziness. And what I tell people is that it's actually a lot less work to speak. And so to take sort of a character definition like laziness or something like that and make it a cause for a child not speaking might sort of be almost in a way sort of a defense mechanism or a denial perhaps. And I really think that it, because children want to progress and want to do things, that I would hesitate to use that sort of judgment to ascribe a child's development.
Catherine, where would you come in as a therapist?
I think that, as Dr. Gollup said, the important thing is that parents ask those questions and feel comfortable to share their concerns with the pediatrician. Often we're there in a capacity if the pediatrician determines that the child needs some support, or maybe we need to evaluate further how the child is doing.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned to us earlier that early intervention is important. So if you notice that there's a problem, it's good to get into a therapist. What kind of things would you work on, say, with a child who was having some problems?
Depending on where the problem areas are early on, especially in the first 3 years of life, much of the learning that a child does is through play and through normal situations. So in a therapy situation, we very closely involve the families and taking the child through very typical experiences through play, talking through gross motor activities that are designed specifically to reinforce certain components of development and then help parents learn how to carry that over in the home setting.
So your contact would typically be a few times, not a prolonged...
Depending on the needs of the child, it can be a one-time visit if the child needs that, or it can be periodically over time to support the parent as the child begins to change.
Well, you mentioned that parent involvement is very important as well. So you're probably doing playthings with the children and working with educational types of toys. What is it that the parents are expected to do out of this? They don't get away scot-free, do they?
No, they don't, and in fact what they find early on is they invest themselves in the process because they begin to see change in their child, and they learn how in very simple ways to reinforce normal development during the course of a day. And in fact, the program that we're having at St. Joseph's this coming Saturday, May 18th, will involve discussing with parents how normal developmental situations can be used to further their child's development. Especially with summer coming up, there are lots of things kids are going to be doing, and so it's helpful to know in very simple ways how you can help your child to do his very best during that summer time.
Catherine Shaker and Dr. Howard Gollup, both from St. Joseph Hospital, thanks this morning for spending some time with us.
Thank you.
All right, goodbye. Today is the day, as you've heard, to donate your non...